the fourth session of the East European Film Festival. The festival has been curated by Dr. Irina Livzeanu, and she has been leading the discussion of the films so far, and she will do it today as well. Dr. Irina is Associate Professor Emeritus at the University of Pittsburgh. Born in Romania, she immigrated to the United States as a child. She has a PhD in Eastern European history from the University of Michigan. She has taught Russian, Soviet, European, Eastern European, and Jewish history at Colby College, the Ohio State University, and the University of Pittsburgh. She has frequently used film in her teaching and developed a course, Eastern European Communism at the Movies, that was cross-listed between film studies and history. Her writing has focused on the cultural, social, and political history of Romania during the 20th century. Welcome, Irina, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for staying with me for these past 4 Saturdays. This is the 4th. And, you know, the films we've watched and discussed together have all been about film, about films about films. And this last one, Reconstituirea in Romanian, Reconstruction or Re-Enactment in English by Lucian Pintilie, is kind of a tough one to end with, but it is by arguably the most influential film director of Romania. And he died a few years ago in 2018 at the age of 84. And he just deserves really the utmost respect for his work. And he worked both in theater and in film, and he was eventually run out of the country for his work, and he was actually given kind of a privileged position, because after this film and after he directed a play by Gogol, the Inspector General in Romania, which was allowed to run for maybe three shows and then was shut down. They basically gave him a passport and said, you can travel freely, which was extremely unheard of. And you couldn't do that as a Romanian citizen. But you cannot work here unless you change your way of thinking about the world. And he said, this was in 1972 or so, he said, well, I've just begun to formulate my concept of the world. I'm not going to be able to change it just like that. And he went off and started working in France and the United States and Yugoslavia at the time. But just a little bit of an overview of him. He was born in southern Bessarabia at the time. That was part of Romania in 1933. That region is, that part of Bessarabia is now part of Ukraine, which is, as you know, a country at war, and then other parts of Bessarabia are part of Moldova, which is an independent country, which may soon be at war as well, because it looks like that is the goal of the Putin regime. But in any case, many Bessarabians, once that part of Romania was incorporated into the Soviet Union, came to Romania. And so he was educated in Romania, and he graduated from the Academy of Film and Theater in Bucharest in the 1950s. And he was then working both in theater and in film and in television as well. And he directed a couple of films that were criticized. The first one was criticized but allowed to run its course in 1966. And then in 1968, he made the Re-Enactment, which was quite problematic. But it was somehow allowed to be made. So we have to really think about that. You know, in Poland and in Czechoslovakia at the time, there were these whole generations of directors who kind of supported each other and formed schools of filmmaking. You know, in Poland, you have first the Polish cinema school, and then the cinema of moral concern, and then in Czechoslovakia, the Czech New Wave, which was, you know, this tremendous outpouring of talent. But in Romania, there was no such thing. But there is kind of a local context, nevertheless, that I want to just very briefly mention. I'm sort of the context person for you, probably unlike more than many of other presenters in this group. And so the local context is that Nicolae Ceausescu, who you probably, most of you know him as the terrible guy who was overthrown in December of 1989, and who had become just the worst dictator in Eastern Europe by that time. He came to power in 1965 after the death of his predecessor, Gheorghe Dej. And Gheorghe Dej had already started a kind of gradual course of independence from the Soviet domination. But Ceausescu definitely followed in that policy, and he was fairly young when he became communist leader of Romania, and somewhat unknown figure. People did not expect him to be the next communist leader, and he seemed fairly liberal, and the anti-Soviet element seemed to stand out about him. And he stressed that in his attempt to establish himself as a popular leader, and he allowed intellectuals to go in different directions culturally, to resurrect certain national poets and some philosophers and writers that had been forbidden previously during the sort of socialist realist period, when anything anti-Russian and anti-Soviet certainly was not ever allowed. So he had a certain following among intellectuals, or he was thought to be a liberalizer in the cultural world. And secondly, he also was the lone communist leader in 1968 who did not join the Warsaw Pact countries in invading Czechoslovakia to suppress the Prague Spring, which was part of the political situation that had allowed all of the Czechoslovak New Wave directors to make those wonderful films. And so, he seemed like something of a breath of fresh air. So Pintilie made this film, Reconstruction, against this background, in this atmosphere. And in making the film in 1968, which is the year when, in August of that year, the Soviet and Warsaw Pact troops invaded Czechoslovakia, he was making the film. He took a screenplay that was made from a novella or a short story written by a journalist who had witnessed a reconstruction of a scene just like the one we see in this movie. Two young guys, recent high school graduates, who had gotten drunk and gotten into a brawl and hurt somebody, made to reenact that scene for educational purposes. And in the process, one of them was hurt and actually was killed. So the film is a dramatization of real events that had taken place. And the film was completed. It was allowed to show, but it was definitely problematic to the authorities, and there was no official launch of the movie. There was no premiere for the movie. There was no promotional material. And within 2 months, it was taken off the market, so to speak. There was no real market, but it showed in a few theaters, and there was kind of word of mouth. You could find out about the fact that it was showing at X place or another, and in a couple of cities, one movie theater in Bucharest, another one in Timișoara. And then that was it. It no longer showed. And Pintilie was invited to Cannes to show the film in 1970 as part of a very prestigious lineup, but the international correspondence was often censored, and so he never actually received the invitation. The secret police intercepted that invitation. So the film is possibly the most important Romanian film ever made. That's what film critics say. That's what Dominic Nasta says. She's a scholar of film who has written a book called Contemporary Romanian Cinema, The History of an Unexpected Miracle. I'm holding it up for you here. She's based in Brussels. She's also Romanian born. And she has a chapter in this book about Lucian Pintilie, both about him and the movies that he's made, and about his role as a role model for the current generation of filmmakers. And she thinks, and I really concur with that, that he has inspired this whole generation of new wave filmmakers in Romania. So that after 1990, they looked back and they thought, my God, we did have someone. We have Lucian Pintilie. And so, you know, he's kind of the root, in a way, the progenitor of this new generation of inspired filmmakers. Now let's talk a little bit about the film itself. It's a dark movie, but it has comedy in it, and it's fascinating that it can do both of those things, I think. And in fact, Dominic Nasta points out that there is a scene that's pure slapstick, and you know, we can talk about it later if any of you wish, but it has to do with all of these people coming out of that van that brings the film crew to the scene where they're going to be filming this reenactment. And it seems to be a sort of endless capacity, this van, and everything they carry with them. And then the horn that doesn't want to stop sounding, which is another element of comedy, I suppose. Now, I was struck very, very much by the theatricality of this film scene, you know, that it all kind of takes place in this one space. You could almost picture it as a theater stage. Although, you know, of course, there is the forest through which they walk, and there are different locations close to the main setting in front of that bar, the inside of which had been the scene of the brawl. And then the characters, the prosecutor, who is the main communist authority in charge of this reenactment, he is dressed like nothing to remind you that he's a communist, right? He's dressed in this white leisure summer suit with a hat, and he looks like a very bourgeois character, and I think that there is a critique in just the looks of this man, a critique of communist, the communist system. If this is a communist, then what's going on here? There's also a kind of surreal atmosphere, as Nasta points out, partly the young girl who runs around in her bikini and seems to be rather unaware of everything that's going on, and is just kind of having fun at the lake, and then climbing up this sort of advertising pole for instant soup. And that too is kind of an indication of, this is no longer Stalinist communism, but this is consumer communism in the 60s. And then the music that's being played, she has a little transistor radio that she carries everywhere. This is another kind of consumerism, and it's kind of Western music that she's playing. So this is a world that's where Western music and Western styles are allowed, and so it's a different, more open world. But at the same time, you've got the reenactment, which is a peculiar communist form of discipline, and kind of a look back at socialist realism. It's also strange how long everything seems to take, and how things don't work, how the technology of the camera and this and that don't work. I mean, that things didn't work a lot in communist Romania, but the contrast between how short the scene is supposed to be and how short it's supposed to take to film this little reenacted scene, and how endless the time that it actually takes to get it put on, to get it all together and make it work, is amazing. And really important is the really fun and warm friendship between the two guys who really care for each other. And then what, you know, the violence that they're made to act towards one another, which ends up being fatal, is just tragic, and that is at, you know, the heart of the movie. There is also the soccer game that's going on very nearby, and you hear the sounds from the soccer game, and they're kind of, there's like a low rumble, and it's kind of threatening, and then at the end of the movie you hear it and you see it, and it's an ugly crowd, and they take part in the violence towards Ripu, the guy who doesn't, the guy who is made to hit Vuika, and therefore he's not the one who gets killed, but he survives and is totally heartbroken by what he has had to be part of. This was considered to be, you know, an amazing, great movie by the few Romanians who got to see it in those 2 months when it played without much advertising. And then it was once again considered to be a great movie in 1990 and after, when it was shown and released in DVD and so on, and considered by critics, you know, along with the wave of cinema and so on that came out in the early 2000s. There is a very vibrant school of film criticism and scholarship as well. And so I have just a few citations about the film. This is a book that came out in 1977, entitled "The Most Important Art, Soviet and East European Film After 1945" by Mira and Antonin Lim. And they describe Reconstruction as the best film to emerge from Romania during the 1960s. Indeed, one of the pinnacles of European cinema during that decade. Then trying to see exactly who this is. In October of 2008, Reconstruction came first in a top 10 of the best Romanian films of all time, awarded by domestic film critics. And for the 40th anniversary at the 1992 Locarno Film Festival, the French journal Positif chose 5 representative films from the modern international circuit, and Reconstruction was one of these 5. with Michel Simon saying this is one of the major works from the East European cinema context, heralding changes which occurred 20 years later. So plenty of accolades for this film. And I want to now turn it to you and see how you received it. It's, as I said, it's savage. And I know when I first talked to Gita about this film, I said, I know it's going to be really tough to watch. And so I apologize.
Thank you very much, Irina. It's now open for discussion. Would anyone like to come in with a comment or a question? Okay, let me begin then. Irina, we opened the festival with a film that reconstructed a part of Romanian history. And now the penultimate film is also about, recreating, reenacting.
Okay.
Of course, this film may not be of a historical event, but a reconstruction nevertheless.
Of a real event.
Yeah. So I was wondering, what is it about reenactments? And both these films are by Romanian filmmakers.
Right.
So what is it about this particular form of representation, that is reconstruction, that is appealing to Romanian filmmakers? Would it be a kind of an ideal vehicle to address the issue of censorship? What could it be like? Do you find this? And I was interested in knowing whether you find this particular form, that is reconstruction, in other art forms in Romania, maybe in theater. And there was one more question that I had, and this other has to do with, the larger issue of history through film. You are a historian and you use films in your class. So what do you think, what kind of truth value would you accord to cinematic representations of history? Can we use film as a primary source for interpreting as well as writing history? I actually came across something, quite interesting while reading up about this film, as well as this larger question of history through film on the net. And I read that quite some time back, there was a survey conducted in Wisconsin in which a group of 26 senior school students were interviewed about the use of film in their history class. And now the composition of this group was very interesting. 13 students were white and 13 Native American. And the teacher showed them Kevin Costner's Dances with the Wolves. The Native American students found the representation of the Native Americans more trustworthy than their textbooks. And the white students thought their textbooks were more reliable sources of history. Of course, we know, where this is coming from, because most textbooks are written from majority perspective of history. Of course, you teach at a university, your students are older, more mature. Nevertheless, what has their response been to learning history through films? Do they appreciate this kind of pedagogy, apart from, of course, finding it cool to be, watching or talking about films in school time?
Right.
So these were some of the questions I had. I'm sorry if I've taken too much time or asked.
Oh, no, not at all. No, I mean, so my thinking was exactly in tune with yours, that these two films are kind of bookends to the films that we've seen, because they are both about reenactments. And of course, Jude's film is an attempt to reenact a historical battle with terrible elements in it, in which the Romanian forces had the responsibility of committing atrocities. And it kind of goes along with a genre of historical reenactments that is fairly popular in the United States. I don't know, maybe elsewhere as well, in which people in the general population will put on uniforms and whatnot, and then reenact, generally in a kind of glorifying way, some famous battle, right? So it's kind of playing with that, right? The reenactors, the non-professional actors in the movie, in the Barbarians movie, wanted to do it as long as it was glorifying the Romanians, right? Whereas the director didn't want to do it like that. So she's kind of saying, this is my show, and I want to bring out historical truths that are not glorifying. So it's okay, so that's, and Jude basically said, I don't think it's very easy and very possible to really do justice to that history on film by trying to just show what happened in Odessa in 1942. This is what the reenactment was about, Odessa in 1942. But I can kind of think with the audience about it by doing this movie about a possible reenactment, right? So it's kind of a sophisticated think film, if I can put it that way, about that. So Pintilie, when he did this movie, he had actually a kind of script written by this guy who had been, apparently, as I've read up more about it, he had been one of the filmmakers on the original crew that was supposed to film the two high school boys who had gotten into this fight with each other while drunk, and who were given the opportunity to reenact their fight at the bar instead of going to jail, and to be filmed while doing it, right? So it's a kind of almost firsthand account of this reenactment of the brawl, which ended up fatally with the death of one kid. And he says, and I actually meant to to read you this. Pintilie talks about why the movie was banned after a couple of months, right? Says, I came from a country where reconstructions were among the most violent means of mystifying and violating reality. Individuals were tortured in order to follow a programmed mise en scène. These people banned my film mainly because they did not understand the fact that I was questioning the very principle of a reconstruction, an abuse of which neither the torturers nor the victims were actually conscious. The second reason for banning it was the tragic finale, which downgraded the very idea of the educational film, the political act led by communist authorities. The third reason came from the image I chose to show of the crowd, resembling a Greek chorus exiting the football match at the end of the story. They are a caricature of humanity, jeered at, marginalized, deprived of any intuition about reality and its tragic facts. This is one of the darkest scenes of my entire work. Human bestiality is suggested both by the off-screen sounds of the football match and by the on-screen final shots. So these reconstructions were not unusual. They were doing these things and then using those films to try to teach people not to get drunk. But, you know, they didn't end well, because they're making people do, while lucid, things that they did while they're drunk. And then they do them in this mechanical way while not caring about them as people. I mean, in the film, certainly, you know, they're caring more about getting back home before the storm than about, you know, these two young people. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the movie is just so anyway, but you asked other questions about Reconstruction. I mean, I think people are always interested in reimagining the past. And I don't know that that it's a particularly Romanian thing in Romanian culture. But it's certainly, you know, I think poetry is used for reimagining the past. Nationalist poetry is used for reimagining the past, and you know, you have different pasts that are established that way, and there are definitely multiple pasts, and then there is a struggle about, you know, if we want to establish one national past, who has the key to that? Because there is no total agreement. and that is why Radu Jude is such a contested director, because he's taking on orthodoxy about what is, it's not nice to imagine that Romanian soldiers did terrible things during World War II. And so we don't talk about that. We cover it up, it's taboo, etc. I don't think I've begun to really answer your many questions.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to say in response to one of your questions is that I think we are living now in such a visual culture that most of us, and certainly most of our students, are learning their history from films, not from books. And so, and so it's important that we, it's important that we have good movies for them to learn from, but it's also important to work with students so that they can view movies critically.
Yes.
Because a movie cannot do what a book does. It doesn't have footnotes. It doesn't cite authors.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have primary and secondary sources. So it's a very different kind of work. And there is an author, I think it's Robert Rosenbaum, who has written about this, about the way films condense material and so on, and so I think that's important to work through with students.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Jayanto, you had, yes, Jayanto,
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Actually, I just put in a little word here that I think what you had in mind, the Irina, is Robert Rosenstone, Yeah, he does talk about, you see, I'll try to address Geeta's second question first, although it has been more than adequately addressed by Dr. Irina. Like whether we like it or not, most historians don't encourage the use of cinema, films to do history, for the obvious reasons, because the cinema is always in the present, it is always in the present, and there is no such thing as once upon a time or in the meanwhile, which gives us a perspective on times in cinema. Right. But whether we like it or not, whether historians like it or not, now most people, not only youngsters and adolescents, most people get their history from films. The problem arises when a very, very crassly commercial film, like some of the Hollywood films and what we call in India as Bollywood, you see, what interferes with the truth, quote unquote, is the fact of the star system. In order to present the star in a particular manner, one takes liberties with the truth. And as you very rightly, correctly pointed out, there are no notes, and there are no footnotes, no annotations, things that make you pause and think and sort of get the multiple voices addressing the same issue. That is one thing. But cinema is here to stay. Most people will continue to get their history from film.
That's right.
Also, there's a little thing that sort of struck me. I don't know how relevant it is, but I found this to be very interesting vis-a-vis this particular film and also connected films, is that there is a very obvious, at least to me, influence of a writer who was perhaps a contemporary of Lucian Pintilie. I'm talking about Mikhail Bakhtin, and Mikhail Bakhtin is very, very contemporary in the sense that although he started his writing, both of them belong to the Soviet bloc, one to actual Russia and the other to a Russian satellite country. And although Bakhtin, he wrote in the late 20s, early 30s and forward, his work was kind of rediscovered in Soviet Russia, in the Russian language in the 1960s. And I think he must have been aware of Bakhtin, the director here. And he may have also been introduced, impressed by him and influenced by him to do this. And all these things as to what we find in the artistic or critical theory of Bakhtin is the notion of heteroglossia, of polyphony, that means there can never be a single voice, which tells us about the truth. The truth is, that is different to everyone. And this is in a way what Pintilie has started, showing this tried to show in this film. Another thing which struck me as very, very relevant vis-a-vis the critical theory of Mikhail Bakhtin and this particular film is the whole notion of the carnival. That there is this notion of the carnivalesque in the theory of Bakhtin, in which he says, he takes us back to the medieval notion of the carnival, which was probably 1 day or 2 days in a year when the social hierarchy was turned upside down, So it was the buffoon or the clown, the most ordinary person who could pass judgment on the king or bishop or whatever, and everyone was on equal footing. Although that is not precisely what is happening here, but everyone has their voice. And this whole thing about everything being described in a fun, bizarre way is very much from Bakhtin, and this whole notion of the carnivalesque, is taken from, it is almost like watching a carnival, wherein there are no social rules, anybody can say anything. And what the carnival and what comedy, what satire, which this is, this film wonderfully manages to do, is to make fun of authority figures, And one way of doing it, in theory as well as in the practice of cinema, is to laugh at pomposity, is to laugh at the lawgiver, the rule maker. And this is what happens here. So in that sense, the laughing girl, the giggling girl is the kind of embodiment of what the filmmaker is trying to do here, So all these things, and then I'm not surprised at all that this was in 1968, and a little later, the same director went on to direct a play which probably he also wrote. It was called Carnival Scenes, So therefore this whole...
Carnival Scenes is from Caragiale, which is Caragiale, and as you were talking about Bakhtin, I was thinking Caragiale because Ion-Luca Caragiale was a playwright from the late 19th, early 20th century, generally comic playwright from Romania, who was just an amazing satirist. And a lot of what you see in Pintilie, I was thinking more about Caragiale than Bakhtin, because Caragiale was just a genius of comedy and of carnival, if you will. But that play that you mentioned, and the movie, he made the movie from Caragiale's play, is Caragiale.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. And Karagiale was actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was, this was, long before communism, but he was he was satirizing Romanian society so well that I think he was run out of Romania. He spent a lot of time in Germany because of his acute satire.
Any more? Yes, Nikhila, please go ahead.
Thank you, Irina. It's been really wonderful to have you with us over the last 3 weeks, and making us watch these fantastic films. Even this one was a hard watch, but I think it's been rewarding. The discussion is indeed really very rewarding. It was difficult for me to watch, partly because if it wasn't funny, it would have looked Kafkaesque. It's so, what is this? I mean, nobody seems to know what is going on. So, except that there's something somewhat funny that also seems to take place. I was thinking about this film. I mean, while watching it, I was just trying to make sense of it. But after that, I was kind of thinking about this film, and I was thinking of, suddenly it occurred to me that, this film is somewhat similar to another film, a Malayalam film that came out in 2015. We have also discussed that film, on Talking Films Online. It's called Oli Divasate Kali. In which also, something like this, nothing in particular seems to be happening, but it's all leading to some kind of explosive kind of a situation. It culminates like this film in something really unexpected and horrifying. And there is a similar kind of enactment that happens in the end. It's not a reenactment. It's a childhood. It's like a game of cops and robbers, and the cop has to find out who among them is the robber, and then there is a punishment that is given, so the punishment ends tragically with one of them, who actually gets killed. So it's like this, and these are all drunken men. They're constantly bickering. There are brawls, and they're fighting with each other, and so it seemed to me that this was the film that I could kind of see some, make sense of the film that we were watching in terms of Oli Divasate Kali. So maybe that's what is happening, because again, as you said, for the most part, the reenactment itself seems so long drawn out. Why can't they get it right? It seems like such a simple thing to get on with, and it never goes in the way that it should. So half the time I was like, what is happening? The chase with the geese at some point, and so who are these people? And suddenly, what is this girl laughing at? And so it all seemed quite puzzling. And for a long time, I couldn't figure out where the noise was coming from. Maybe
the noise from the football.
Yeah. So I kept wondering where it was coming from. Is it the radio? Is it something else? Or the television set we keep looking at?
Yes, that is also a source of. At one point, there's an ambulance, right? Which you first see on television, and and then it comes.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's a very interesting layering of media and
Yeah.
reality.
Yes.
But I think part of it is a kind of great big metaphor, you know, for all of these, you know, it's sort of, this is sort of peasant life and ordinary life. And then on top of that is socialism. And, you know, socialism is supposed to run everything and be very efficient. And, but, you know, this is actually life in Romania for the past 2 centuries, and that doesn't change much. And it's like a constant challenge to what we're supposed to do, you know, to what the authorities have in mind. And even the authorities is, you know, this guy clad in all white suit and his hat and constantly using his handkerchief to make himself less hot. I have to let in my cat. She wants in. 1 second. Yes, Mimi. Sorry. She has to join us. You know, and it's, and the people that come and sell berries, and you know, this has been going on for hundreds of years, and you know, nothing that the Communist Party says will change it. And so you better get used to it. This is it. And I don't know if I think that's the feeling I had about some of the absurdity of this long time that, you know, nothing can get done because this is rural Romania. I don't know exactly, but I think, you know, in his way, I think he's capturing some of that. And then in a sense, you know, the violence comes because of that, you know, because you're not, you know, socialism doesn't work here. And so we kind of, something is, we make it work, but not really, you know, we kind of, it's some sort of counterfeit violent action. It's not the real thing at all, I think. Yeah.
Any other question, comment?
And I should say too that there is, of course, a tradition of absurd fiction and absurd theater. You know, Ionesco, and even Caragiale. I mean, you know, that's the precursor of Ionesco, if you will. I mean, he's much more satirical in a maybe more conventional way, but and then interestingly, Pintilie was married for a long time to a very excellent actress, but then she died, and after she died, he became involved and was the partner of Marie-France Ionesco, who was Ionesco's daughter, until he died. So there is a kind of family connection there.
Faniraj, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask Ida
Yes.
ma'am, like what you think about post-Soviet Romanian society? The Christian PU, I suppose I spell him right because whatever I have in English. Has made a total to
Post-Soviet what?
Christian PU, who made Serena Vida in 2016, a 3-hour 45 minutes long family drama.
I'm not hearing you quite right.
I mean Christian PU, who
Puyu,
made PU,
Puyu,
okay,
right?
PU, yeah.
Okay,
Who
who
made
made
Serena Vida in 2016 about a family drama post-Soviet Romanian society, a 3-hour 45 minutes film, a longish film about post-Soviet Romanian society, which was iconically depicting what is the effect of the post-Soviet Union Romanian society and Romanian society itself, and how
I don't know. What's the title of the film?
Serena Vida.
Sierra Nevada. Yes, I have seen it.
Yeah. I mean,
But
what? No, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
What do you want to have a comment on that? Because I agree fully with you with your commentary and with your sociological views about what happened during post 42 to 78 when this film was made, and then what happened post 1990s collapse of Soviet Union and how Romanian society and post Ceausescu, what happened and and some kind of socio-political settlement happened in 21st century, right? And post that, when filmmakers started making up films, especially the Sierra Vida attracted me in 2016 film festivals. I mean, I'm not sure. Because I'm not I don't have scholarship following on Romanian films, but I happened to see this film in 2016 in film festivals, and I was wondering, it's a whole story about post-Soviet Union Eastern European societies, about not only Romania, it's about Polish and Czechoslovakian, Georgian, whatever.
I'm trying to
But
remember the
yeah,
film, but
yeah,
can you
yeah,
remind me a little bit of what?
It's a big family drama running about 3 hours 45 minutes, right? and
There's a lot of
talking
talking in it, right? There,
a lot of talking in it, lot of talking about the kind of corporate world which they are incorporated into, and cut of memories of post pre 1990s Soviet Union. So this kind of clash is supposed to happen in the 3-hour 45 minutes drama. So I'm just, I mean, because so many cinemas are coming out of Eastern European societies post USSR collapse, which are meditating about this kind of uh, family dramas.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, any film. I just quoted one Sierra Nevada because I don't have access to many films, but this film I had an access and I loved it for 3 or 45 minutes. But it takes me to something to meditate, that what kind of society we are shaping into post USSR in a post corporate world. So I'm not posing any question and I'm not expecting any answer from you. That is mediated through that particular kind of socio-political environment post-Soviet Union, post-corporate society in Romania. Through
So
this film or any other film you like.
okay. So yeah, I was just trying to refresh my memory about the film, and I all I remember is that there is a lot of family interaction and that they're all talking to each other a lot. But your question is basically post-communist Eastern Europe, and you're asking about society in that part of the world, or the cultural scene. I'm not sure if what you or filmmaking.
No. Christian P. was speaking something post 2010, and that movie came out
Yeah.
in 2016.
Yeah, it came out in
It was a
2016.
Romanian society post 2010. I mean, post
But
USSR and post
yeah,
capitalist regimes in Romania, Poland, or whatever Eastern European.
yeah, these are capitalist regimes, sure.
Yeah. Is, are those kinds of films are a kind of mediation about post USSR, post separate societies? Are they some kind of views? That's, I'm as a film student, I just wanted to know what their philosophical attitude towards the what is happening in society is. That's my question.
So it's a society which is capitalist and with a lot of inequities, certainly with a lot more freedom to express whatever you want. I think, as I remember, in Sierra Nevada, Cristi Puiu is showing us sort of a middle class scene with lots of food, but I don't remember it that well. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
No, ma'am. No, it's not answering anyone's question because we're not close to each other and we don't expect answer from each other. But he tried to kind of show a society, a middle class society, a kind of a middle
Yes.
class society in Romania, post 2010, which was corporatized capitalist state, where remembering the past Soviet society was there and family was engulfed in Christianity as well as post communist society's social benefits are there. So it happens in a 3 hour 45 minute social drama where the conflict about what is present society is, where do we get a spiritual meaning for our life, for present existence is. Right. So that kind of a dramas are happening. Romanian films are coming post 2010 and questioning that kind of existence, which is having a remembrance about social security norms of uh, uh, pre-1990s communist society, post-capitalist society existence, and uncertainties about corporate Romania, and then questioning what we are through family dramas. Well, that's very interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm only seeing that like people, I mean, film directors through Romania are mediating towards post, especially post in 21st century, they are mediating through family existence about Christian values, which Romania had always, in any case, and through pre-1990s socialist values where free education, I mean, education, healthcare, and pension benefits are there, which also apply to the families. And then present regimes, how do you recollect it and how do you live through your family? A host of films are coming post 2010 from Romania, meditating about these three things: sociologically secure things and about independence, etc. That's why I was interested that I know. Sorry, yeah, I posed this question because of that particular film, with a 3 hours 45 minutes film, which meditates about these kind of things. Sierra Nevada is a kind of a title which doesn't mean anything, but it means to a Romanian society inside. Sierra Nevada is a beautiful, picturesque, mountainous place in Italy. Okay, but
Sierra Nevada is
yeah,
a,
yeah,
a
what it
place
means
in
to
California.
inner life of uh, a Romanian society post collapse of Soviet Union. That was interesting for me. No, it's not a question. I don't need an answer from you, but it
Okay,
needs a
good.
mediation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Monish here.
Yes, Monish, please go ahead.
One thing that struck me seeing this film is that apart from being a very harsh critic of the communist society and the hierarchies that exist at that time, is that the film is also a very modernist film in the sense that it is also a critique of the process of filmmaking itself.
Yeah.
That is something very, yeah, because certain, you see how much of detail he goes into the shows of loading the film. The film is being shot by this one-man crew, which is in a way very absurd. No films are shot like that. I mean,
Okay.
and there is no sound recorders, these and that. And also, in a way, like one question, I mean, it becomes absurd to us in a way. It's a repetition of the things which is happening again. And the question that comes up is, why is it taking so much of time?
Yeah.
That is because the process of filmmaking itself takes time, and the direct, because you see, there's a section where this guy says, why your acting is very bad. You can't do it. And what's like this? You can't. But this guy says, we're not drunk. So how can we act? These kind of actors and all. So these things sort of happen all the time during making a film. There are technical glitches, the actors can act. And probably what happens is that the director of the film, in a way, we have a physical director here who actually becomes violent and becomes a participant and starts fighting with one of these characters because he's not getting the scenes as he wants them. And there is this meta director, which is prosecutor, who's actually who's actually controlling everything. It's his wish is the command which is being followed. And why I'm saying it's a very modernist trend, because in the very opening shots of the film, Pintilie makes it clear that he is also making a film. Because you see the clapperboard coming in. And the clapperboard is a symbol of a film. You don't see the clapperboard being used by this 16mm film director who's shooting in the film. So Pintilie, in a way, is also critiquing, in a way, the process of filmmaking itself, the powers of the character. He can become a dictator. There's filmmakers like this, who actually have a full vision and command of the thing, and they take 100 takes, or maybe they go into 200 takes to get a perfect shot, without about what is going through his or her actors or to the producer and things like that. So this is, I think, a very interesting aspect, and also in a way I felt it's modernist in the sense that this film incorporates certain trends, modernist trends, which were happening in European cinema at that time. The use of jump cuts, freeze frames, slightly dislocated narrative, repetition, absurdity happening. So it's a very, very interesting film. But the contemporary filmmakers, I think, in that way, like Jude's film we saw, or the other couple of other Romanian films I've seen, I feel, I'm asking you this question, their style of making a film is different from Pintilie's 1960s modernism, isn't it? They're into this quasi-documentary style filmmaking, long takes happening, mise-en shots, these and that. So why there is this departure in stylistics. If influential film, I understand in terms of subject, but there's a major shift in stylistics of making a film.
Yeah.
Contemporary Romanian. Why is this huge shift in style?
Well, I think I agree with you that there are these modernist elements that Pintilie incorporates in his film made in the 60s. So it's kind of dated, very innovative for that time. But I think that these people who were born in the 60s and 70s are innovative for their time, right? So they are not doing exactly what Pintilie did. They are inspired by him and maybe inspired by him more conceptually rather than in exactly his methods. I mean, I think you're very knowledgeable about exactly the film methods that Pintilie was using and that Jude and the newer generation are using. I am less able to comment specifically about those, but I'm not surprised that they are departing technically, from those methods used by Pintilie in the 60s. Now, Pintilie had a very long career, and I haven't kept up with him. I mean, there's one movie that I've seen and taught a lot, which was made, when was it? It was made, I think, in the 90s, called An Unforgettable Summer, which I think, but he's made many more, and I have not seen them all. And I think he also, Pintilie himself, departs from his 1960s way of filming. It's just that this particular movie, Reconstruction, was such kind of great big monument for the 1960s, and especially because he was kind of all alone doing it in Romania at that time. It wasn't like the Czech New Wave or the Polish School or the cinema of moral concern in Poland, where there were groups of people working alongside each other. Does that make sense, Monish?
Arun, can you go? Arun has raised his hand. Yes, please go ahead, Arun.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Thank you, madam. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, well, I really enjoyed the film. It was a wonderful watch. In fact, I had searched for this film some time back and was, I couldn't get my hands on it. And thank you to Dr. Irina for making it available. So, yeah, a couple of things about the film. So going back to what Dr. Geeta was saying at the beginning about this whole notion of reconstruction, cinematic reconstruction of history, it struck me quite profoundly. The idea of cinematic reconstruction, which is made evident right there in the title itself. It reminded me of R.G. Collingwood. I'm not sure whether there is any direct connection, but Collingwood was this British historian, right? So he had written this interesting book which came out in 1946 called The Idea of History. And this is the exact word that he uses to describe history, reenactment. He says that
Okay.
history is reenactment. Yeah, he says that history is the reenactment of, or to be more precise, the study of history. He's talking about the study of history. The study of history is the reenactment of past events, right? So you have to be materially as well as mentally in that historical time and space. So it's that is the vocation of the historian, according to him. So that reminded me of this, these words, reenactment as well as reconstruction. So that was interesting, and maybe I thought there is some connection there. Yeah. So. And interestingly, there is another film which came out in 1970 by the Greek director Angelopoulos. That is also called Reconstruction, and it also deals with the same theme. Yeah, it is his first film. Theo Angelopoulos, the great author, right? So his first film is called Reconstruction, and it deals with the reconstruction of a murder. A wife murders her husband in a remote village, and this is reconstructed by the authorities. But it is never shown. It is just detailed through narration. Yeah.
Okay.
So I found it interesting. Maybe there is an influence. It came out in 1970.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
it would have
okay.
been, Pintilie influencing Angelopoulos, since
Yeah, that's what I think. But the tonality of the film is, of course, very different, right? It's not Angelopoulos's film is typically, in his style, very somber and very profound. So, yeah, and getting back to this film, and this film starts off in a very goofy and silly manner, and it, which is reminiscent of early French New Wave films, or like you said, Czech New Wave films, and the whole thing about, the obstacles that come across, to reach the final, there is a event that is you have to reconstruct the scene, but they've come across many obstacles. So this reminded me of Milos Forman's Fireman's Ball. They try to organize this ball, yeah, and they cannot do it. There are a lot of obstacles, or even it is one could think of Buñuel's Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. The dinner party cannot take place, obstacles keep on happening, absurd obstacles,
yeah.
So it reminded me of that. And yeah, so another thing was, I think, again, Geeta ma'am mentioned about the possibility of cinema being used as a truth-telling medium, right? The possibility of cinema to document or even retell history, right? So retelling history is in a way retelling the truth. So this reminded me of, everybody knows Adorno's critique of cinema, and he was very harsh on, cinema as a medium which could tell the truth. He didn't believe in it, but even he had some weird ideas about the potential of cinema. Alexander Kluge, who was a German director and writer, he was a student of Adorno, and he had said that Adorno had this weird idea about shooting using a camera by blindfolding the camera person. And he said that this is the only way to document reality as it is. The machine captures the reality without the intervention of the subjectivity of the camera person, right? So that reminded me of that. Yeah, that's all. Some random comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I didn't know about the Angelopoulos film. I'm going to try to see it. It would be interesting to see, you know, if there is possibly any connection, if Angelopoulos was aware of the other Reconstruction film. But as far as Fireman's Ball, there I can see the similarities there. I mean, the tone is a little different, and Foreman was using a lot of non-professional actors, and you know, the part of the ball that doesn't come together is the beauty contest, right? The ball takes place,
Yes.
but the beauty contest never
Yeah.
doesn't
But
come
there are
up.
a lot of obstacles. I think at the end there is an explosion or something. The fire breaks out.
Yes,
Something.
there's a
Yeah,
fire
right.
next door, and they can't seem, you know, even though they're firemen, they aren't able to deal with it properly. And then meanwhile, they have I forget what it's called. They have a table full of prizes. People are supposed to contribute money, right? And everybody steals the prizes. So that's another way of critiquing socialism, right? So it's a more upbeat kind of tone to the movie, but it's a very strong critique of socialism as well. And it's about the same time, for sure.
Any more comments, questions? Would anyone like to step in?
Monish?
I have a second question.
Yes, Monish, go ahead, please.
Seeing that slapstick element in this Pintilie's film, it reminded me of another Romanian film made in 1962 called A Bomb Was Stolen. A Bomb Was Stolen. 1960.
Bomb Was Stolen?
Ian Popescu Gopo, about a small atomic bomb being, misplaced, and kind of a absurdist comedy that happens through it, and it talks about world peace.
Is it an animated film?
No. It's
no.
a film.
Okay, because Gopo usually did animations.
No, this one has no dialogues.
Okay.
Music and very slapstick comedy used. Totally, kind of Keaton and that kind of influence, Max Sennett influence you can see in this film. And watching this, slapstick element in Pintilie's film and a couple of other later Romanian films of contemporary times, there's this comedy used. I'd like to ask you, is there a very deep tradition of this subversive comedies in Romania? And this kind of thing?
Yes. I haven't seen that movie, but there is a big tradition of subversive comedy. I think
what is the root?
I can say yes to that.
What is the root of this kind of absurdist comedy? The social or the cultural root? Or is it just a reaction? I mean, it happened, or it is a kind of tradition in Romanian folklore or culture itself? This comedy.
I don't think it comes from folklore. I think it comes from, oh God, I think it comes from plenty of sharp wit and total lack of power. That combination, it's well, I don't know really, but I mean, there are certain people. I can point to Karaciale, first of all, and then Urmuz is a kind of the precursor of the avant-garde. And then there is a big avant-garde tradition, you know, they are all kind of big on satire and humor, Black humor as well. That's a really big question, and I feel somewhat unprepared for it, but I guess I'm glad that this movie provokes that question, and that you've seen other Romanian films that also do that, and I suppose even in Jude's films, you know, which are pretty serious, there's always a touch of that.
There's a lot of wit in Jude.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who met 1208 east of Bucharest.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wit in Aferim also. In certain portions, it's witty, but it's very dark again. Is it a tradition in Eastern Europe? Because I find same things in Czech films, in Armenia, jokes of the Soviet Union, again, which are very critical of that model. So is it a kind of a cultural output of oppression and non-liberty that you're trying to joke about it and make it more subversive?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an output of oppression. It's a way of dealing with oppression. It's you know, making fun of it, making it palatable, and also you know, saving your own spirits by laughing about it instead of crying. I mean, crying makes you sad, whereas laughing makes you, you know, laughing is healthy for the individual and for the collective. And so there's a strong tradition of joking, and that was true during the communist period, but it was also true prior to that, during the various imperial periods. And I should ask you, since India had pretty long imperial period, was there a similar humoristic reaction in India? That I am not, I'm not knowledgeable about India.
As far as I know, not much in cinema, at least. Not much in cinema.
Mm-hmm. But in literature?
Could be, yes. There are a couple of Bengali writers who are, you know, satirists of the British rule or contemporary society at that time, like Bankim Chandra talked about that, very key Bengali novelist, and who started the Bengali novel movement. I mean, he's the father of Bengali novel writing. He had written a couple of sketches of a character called Muchiram Gur. And Muchiram Gur is a kind of, you know, he's a opium addict, this kind of thing, but he's a major critic of the social, the judicial systems, this and that. And not in cinema. I mean, even in contemporary India, I can think of only one this kind of comedy, very bad, which was made in the 80s, a film called Jane Bhido Yaro by Kundan Shah, which is still so relevant. It talks about that corruption, it talks about political involvement in corruption.
Right.
how public works, bridges fall down due to bad construction because of bribery, these and that, but not
Mm-hmm.
other films also. I don't think this kind of black
Mm.
existed as far as I know in Indian cinema. But
Okay.
in another film I found it very funny was Tales from a Golden Age.
Yes, of course.
It's a
Yeah.
laugh-a-thon, but it's again such a bitter critic of the
Mhm.
upset of the communist rule. So I think in Eastern Europe, this tradition is more.
Oh, it's very rich, very rich.
Laughing. Yes. Thank you so much.
Definitely. There is a film from Hungary that called The Witness that was also really, really funny. I have to remember who it is by. Let's see. It's oh no, I'm not getting the right movie here.
Back soon. I've seen this film quite a long time back. Peter something, Bachko.
Peter Baxo. Peter Baxo.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Bacho. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's really, really funny about, the show trials and excellent comedy about the show trials. So yeah, East Europeans seem to be able to make fun of anything. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of comedy comes out about Putin's war in Ukraine. It may not be so easy this time.
Yeah, Irina, following that comment, I mean, whatever films which were coming in 21st century from Eastern Europe follows one convergence through a socio-philosophical comment which made by Walter Benjamin.
Yeah.
That excavating history is excavating through layers, right? And I mean, like archaeology, you know his thesis on archaeology, right? That while we want to find out what happened in a particular time in history, is not exactly not what we want to know at that point, but while excavating through it, layers by layers were informed by what happened through the ages, right? From informed by that particular point in the history, there are many interpretations, layers by layers. That's what he calls as archaeology of history, right? So
Right.
look at archaeology of history, like layers by layers, we invent what we reach to the point is we reinterpret the history what has started at that point. Because
Right.
before that, after that, many layers of commentaries has built upon it, layer by layer. So he calls it as archaeology, right? We go on to excavate, and each layer we find some truth which has been accumulated throughout the years of experience of social living. So when we reach to that point, what we have is not exactly what it is, what happened at the time, but what is informed through layers of history, layers of knowledge, what we gain through layers and layers of things, what we are gained through excavating that particular point. So our knowledge at any particular point is not guided by exactly what happened at the time, but is informed by layers and layer of narrative which is constructed over the years up to this time.
Yeah.
So he calls it as archaeology of history, right? An excavation. So in that light, whatever Eastern European films which are coming, which we are enlightened to hear your lecture on that, and that seems that we are going to reconstruct it in that layers, and films are depicting that through those layers. And there's no absoluteness in this, right? Absoluteness in this, that we got to understand those layers as they come by years together, from layer to layer to layer to present knowledge. And of course, we need not wait for answers from the films. We should mediate through the films. I mean, we should ourselves reflect through what film supposed to say to us, and how to reflect to the archaeology of history, what Benjamin is. That's my point, what I want to say.
I I agree. I appreciate that.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. In that case, we come to the end of... Yes, sorry.
Shall I?
Yeah, please go ahead, Tarkeshwar.
Okay. Thank you, Irina, for all the films which are in that sense a kind of meta film. They talk about the filmmaking and the function of the film, or what are the uses of the film as such. So in that sense, it was quite interesting. It was not just a East European films that we watched. We also watched the films on films. So in that sense, and especially the discussion today about the past and the question of film was quite interesting, in the sense that we try to, this new technology when it came, it's interesting to see these movies as the immediate, talking about the immediate context of their production, when they were communist government, and how they tried to censor certain things, and how did creatively these people engage with that censor. That is one way of making sense of these movies. The other thing is, if we are looking at them as meta films, they're also talking about the function of the movies itself. In a sense, the state wants to use movies in a particular way, and in spite of its intention to control this new technology, that new technology has other possibilities. So they want to come out with a film for education purpose, but what it happens is completely different at all. So in that sense, one is to look at these films in the context of their production in a particular space and locale. Another is to look at them as comments on the new technology that was coming in and the way people reacted to it. That was one. And then coming back to the question of past, as a historian, you would know that there are different ways in which history looks at this, what we are calling as new technology, or using new technology as an aid for writing about the past. That is one thing. Mainly the documentary historians, they use that to document certain things so that we can write an historiography about it later on, so as an aid to historiography. The other is the points that were discussed is history itself as a source of, films itself as a source of history. One is the popular history. So many of us, we don't know what the past was, but the past is shown to us in the present vividly, visually, on a big screen or on a small screen in front of me. So I obtain certain knowledge of the past through these films. Then the other one is film itself as an artifact of history. So looking at film as an artifact, film as a piece of a past, and try to construct the past through this artifact. That is another thing. And then interestingly, film also has a take on past. Film itself being a historical artifact, and then film being a source of popular history, but film also takes a stand on past by reconstructing it. So in that sense, it is also writing a historiography. But how do we differentiate between the verbal historiography the historian constructs and the non-verbal plus verbal historiography that the film constructs? So these are the interesting issues that the films that we saw this month have shown up, and the discussion is also quite interesting. I think I don't want to take much time because some of these issues we can go on talking about it. So thanks to you for making us watch these movies and also initiating the discussion about these issues. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed this. You know, I've shown these movies before, but I've never discussed them with this group of people, and what an interesting, distinguished group of people. Wow. And it's I very much enjoyed these discussions.
Irina, if you take a look at the chat box, there is a list of films which are satirical in nature from different languages. There are some from Gujarati, there is one from Malayalam, I think. So there are a few films from India as well, which are satirical in nature.
That's great. Now, can I find these easily, or?
I think most of them are quite easily available, especially the Gujarati films, Hunshi Hunshilal and Bhavni Bhavai, I know are available.
Okay.
Bhuvan Shom also should be available. I'm not sure about the Malayalam film.
Yeah, it is available on YouTube, but I
Okay.
don't think there are subtitles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is a big problem.
No subtitles. Oh,
No.
Yeah.
I'll just have to learn the language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much, Irina. We are extremely grateful to you for putting this festival together for us. We especially appreciate the care you have taken in curating this. Each one of the films spoke to the other. You know, there was both thematic and artistic unity in your choice of films. So that kind of gave us a good idea of East European cinema, which is not that easily accessible to most of us. It's been an incredibly exciting 4 Saturdays now. And personally for me, before I watched Bad Luck Banging Loony Porn, the only Romanian name I knew was Nadia Comaneci. And
a different genre altogether.
Yeah, altogether, yes. Although equally artistic in her own way, I must say. Now I can add Radu Jude, Lucian Pintilie, and of course, you, the historian, Irina Livzeanu. And before we close, I must mention that we will be ending the East European Film Festival with a Ukrainian film, Donbass. I know you are committed elsewhere next Saturday, but I do hope you can watch the recorded discussion, and we would love to have your comments on it. As and when you find the time, please try and attend our sessions. We would benefit greatly.
I would love to. By the way, how do I know about what you're doing?
Are you on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, then in that case, I will send you a friend request, and then after you accept my friend request, I'll send you an invite to the group. And once you are on the group, you can see every week we post the film for the next Saturday, and then we also put up videos of the discussions on the group.
Thank you so much. That'll be great. I will see you again then.
Yes. Thank you very much, Irina. And we would also like to place on record our gratitude to Professor Nipa Majumdar for introducing you to us.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good day. And if your cat is still around, we would like to see her.
She was scratching. One second.
Okay, that's okay.
Mimi. Mimi. Come here.
Oh, oh my God.
Mimi. This is Mimi.
Okay, Mimi.
I think she's very hungry.
Oh,
So she was trying to get my attention.
We are so sorry for keeping.
And then leading the way towards the food.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you very much for doing this for PFO. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was good, so good to get to know you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Same here.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.